Occultist, this is DM Nell, and this is episode 74 of Shadow of the Demon Lord Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the Demon Lord, the Void, and everything. So, you're going to get a little piece of how my brain works here. Anytime I start playing in a new sandbox, a new campaign setting, I always want to understand the creation mythology and how everything came into being. And when I started doing it for the Shadow of the Demon Lord, I really ate the shit up because Rob Schwab actually put a lot of thought into the creation mythology of this campaign setting, and it is detailed in The Hunger and the Void, Chapter 5, in fact. So I'm going to be talking mostly from this supplement, but there are a couple other supplements I'm going to be talking about, and of course the core rulebook talks a little bit about the creation myth, but not much. So Hunger in the Void, Genius Loci, and Pull the Stars really kind of details the cosmology and the creation of the universe. But this is going to be heavy on spoilers on how everything was created, so if you are a player and you don't want to know this stuff, then you better tune out. Otherwise, if you want to know all this stuff to spite your DM, then feel free to stick around. All right, so the universe of the Demon Lord started off as, I'm going to call it a singularity. It was a singularity that contained everything that ever will be. Right? It was just one hunk of mass, whether it was matter, whether it was infinitesimally small or infinitesimally big, we don't know. But it was just a singularity. Everything existed there. And then we called this God because we don't have any better term for it. It is, a singularity, and it became self-aware. At the point it became self-aware, it is God, because now it knows it exists. And at that point, it became lonely, and it wanted companionship. So, using the words of creation, or also known as words of power, God, or the singularity, basically split a chunk of itself off and created the demiurge. So what was once a whole is now two parts. Well, the problem with that is you can't have a whole that fills its entire space and split off a piece of it, because there's no place for that other piece to go, unless it also created a void for these two things to exist in. Now, maybe the void already existed around the singularity. I don't like to think of it that way. I like to think of it as it was everything, and then the process of creating the demiurge also created the void for these two separate entities to exist within. So now you had God and you had the demiurge. So they existed together. They were happy. They chit-chatted. They had coffee. Maybe they played some D&D together or something. But at some point, the demiurge, it decided to create things, because a byproduct of God creating it was that it had an urge to create other things, and so it created the genies. So it popped little pieces of itself off and created genies, and these genies all had the urge to create things, because that's what the demiurge created them for. It created them out of a desire to create things, so they were built with, they're hardwired to want to create things themselves. So the genies understood everything that the demiurge understood, which understood everything that God understood, and that is including the words of power, or words of creation. So the genies started using these words of creation to steal matter and energy and all the stuff from God. And so they go in and start plundering all this stuff, all this matter and energy from God, and they start creating things. So they create, stars and planets and asteroids and nebula and galaxies and megastructure galaxies and all this stuff they started creating within the void. And the process of creation causes the void to grow and expand. So we can call this inflation, which is what we call this in our in our reality, but we'll use the same concept here. So as these genies are creating, the void is expanding to encompass all of these creations. And so the void is expanding, God is shrinking, and the demiurge is also shrinking because they're not content to just plunder from God. They're plundering from the demiurge as well. So at some point, God is like realizing, hey, I'm getting smaller here. What the actual fuck? And it realizes what's happening, and it doesn't like it. It finds itself regretting the creation of anything besides itself. So it was once everything, and now it's starting to shrink into almost nothing in its mind. So it starts becoming resentful and hateful of these genies and of the demiurge and all these things that were being created out of its substance. And so, but it was at this point it was too late because the genies had already created all these things inside the void. The void had grown into this huge empty space that was now being filled with all these little things like galaxies and stuff. And so the thing that was God, just began seething with hatred of everything that was stolen from it. And so it becomes the demon lord. And so the demon lord starts looking around thinking, I want my stuff back. Okay, time out. I want my shit back. So it kind of begins to want to consume and reclaim everything that was his or its. Now, in the meantime, the demiurge is shrunken down basically to almost nothing. It just kind of disintegrates into, once all of the major portions of matter have been stolen from it, it just kind of breaks apart and becomes little chunks of stuff. These little chunks of stuff just kind of start floating in the void, and the demon lord basically says, all this extra stuff I'm reclaiming it. And these little things become demons, and they start sharing the demon lord's hatred for everything that was created. And they want to destroy everything and let the demon lord reabsorb it. So you've got these genies out here tirelessly building all this shit. You've got these demons created to destroy all the shit. So they're going in behind the genies and tearing up everything that the genies had built. The genies are pissed off. And so the genies decide, okay, hold on. We can't just be building shit and having the demons come in and destroy it. And now we got this pissed off god over here that's now calling itself the demon lord for some reason. And it's going to come in and start reclaiming everything that we built. So the genies, they kind of got together. I'm thinking the genies have like a hive mind kind of mentality because they created all these different things, universes or not universes. At this point, everything was one universe. But they created all these galaxies and planets and stuff, and they seeded life everywhere. And there's a lot of similarities in all their creations, and there's some differences here and there. But for the most part, there's a lot of uniformity to everything that they created. A lot of there's humans here, but there's also humans over there. So there's elves here, but there's also elves over there. So or fae here, there's also fae over there. So everything that was created by the genies, have kind of a blueprint, if you will. So there's a lot of similarities throughout the universe at this point. So the genies, they decide we got to protect our shit. Else these demons and this pissed off god is going to come in and destroy everything. So they pull together and they say we need to create a great barrier. And this great barrier is going to protect our existences, our creations. So now this part is not really described here. So I'm filling in kind of some blanks just for my own campaign. And you can do the same for your campaign. But how I envision this taking place is the genies look at the immensity of the void and they decide, it's not going to really be feasible for us to create a barrier, just like a wall that shuts off the demon lord and the demons from our reality. For one thing, the demons are already mixed into our shit. So you're only going to be cutting off some of the demons. So instead, and it would take way too much energy for the genies to create this solid barrier. Plus, you got this expanding void, and who's to say? Maybe it's still expanding. And maybe if they created just a singular barrier, like right down the middle or whatever, that the void wouldn't outgrow the barrier and the demon lord and the demons wouldn't be able to get around it unless they expanded, which would cost more energy that they don't have because they have a finite amount of energy to work with that they stole from the demiurge and from God. So instead of doing that, what they decided to do was to take their specific creations, their little corners of the multiverse or the universe, the universe at this point, and they were going to encompass them in spheres, because spheres take the least amount of energy of any structure, and so they were going to create spheres of energy around their little corner of the universe that they created. So you got little bubbles popping up all over the void that used to be this huge universe full of galaxies and mega galaxy structures, galaxy clusters, and all this stuff. But the genies, cram everything into their own personal bubbles, and you have countless bubbles out there. Hundreds or millions or trillions or whatever of bubbles. Each bubble containing all of the galaxies and all the stuff that genie created, or that group of genies created. So now you've got the void, you've got all these bubble universes, which we'll now call the multiverse, existing, and God is out here, or the demon lord is out here, and where at one point he saw all of his stuff just waiting to be sucked back up. Now he can't touch his stuff because his stuff is protected by energy created from him. So he's just it's like repelling himself because they're the same polarity, I guess. We can think of it that way. God or the demon lord and the energy around these universes are the same polarity, so he can't penetrate them. Unless there is like a hole punctured in one of these universes, and the holes can only be punctured from within. That's just some of the rules that the genies use to create these energy barrier bubbles. And so I kind of envision it looking something like this. So you have all of these separate little universes in their little bubbles. You have the void, which is the space between. And then you have the demon lord out here. And, whenever he's able, whenever one of these universes do something stupid and poke a hole through the barrier from within, then that kind of creates a beacon for the demon lord to say, that universe has a hole in it that I can exploit and suck all my stuff back through. So this is the demon lord finding a universe that has a hole in the Great Barrier, and it begins to consume that universe. Now, of course, before it consumes a universe, its shadow falls over the universe. The demon lord's shadow falls over the universe, and that causes the hole that was already in the barrier to weaken and to fragment even more, preparing the universe to be reabsorbed by the demon lord. So that shadow is what causes the events in the campaign setting. Mutations, weird magic, all the things that start making the apocalypses begin are the result of the Demon Lord's shadow falling upon the universe that it is going to consume. So that's how I envision the cosmology and everything existing in the campaign setting for Shadow of the Demon Lord. So this is kind of the macro view of the Void and the multiverses that exist within the Void. Now, if you were to zoom in on the Void, you're going to see all the minutia that you can't see when you're out, in the macro view. So a good picture of the Void is actually in Hunger in the Void, Hunger in the Void supplement, and it is the start of chapter 5. So this picture, and who's the artist? Because this is great stuff. The picture was, I think it's Mirko Paganesi, maybe. Well, let me just tell you all the artists from this book because it's full of great art. So the various artists include Kevin Atkins, Jack Kaiser, Pat Loboyko, Britt Martin, Mirko Paganesi, and Svetoslav Petrov. And of course, this was written by Robert Schwalb, editing by Kim Mohan, art direction Kara Hamilton and Robert Schwalb, proofreading, layout, and graphic design Kara Hamilton. Already said the cover, interior, and I already said those. Okay, so I think this is Paganesi's work, but I don't know that for a fact. So if it's not, I apologize. But I did read off all the artists that contributed to this book. But this is just a snapshot of what you might see if you were to take a look inside the Void. And the Void is actually full of crumbs. And the crumbs are the residual pieces of not only God and the Demiurge, but also the Demon Lord's been busy. I mean, we're talking eons worth of time that this has all happened within. And so during this time, the Demon Lord has been finding weakened universes, destroying them, and reabsorbing them. Well, the Demon Lord's a sloppy eater. And in the process of consuming a world, it just kind of, a universe, it just kind of, the universe just kind of, explodes in his mouth, in essence, and a lot of that stuff just sprays out into the Void. Well, the Void now has chunks of these different realities that have been destroyed by the Demon Lord, but pieces of those realities still exist as islands or different structures within the Void. And those are also discussed in the Hunger in the Void supplement. Well, I can never remember the name of this supplement. It's my favorite fucking supplement, and I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, it's got all of these different things that you can find in the Void. And there's actually tables that you can create things, different islands in the Void, which allows you to use the Void as a playground. And so that gets me to the portion of this video that I wanted to talk about how you can play around in the Void. So this book will help you do that. The Void is definitely someplace that can be used for adventures, and you can build all that stuff from the supplement. Now, there's not an adventure supplement out there, or there's not an adventure that is written in the Void that I'm aware of. So you're going to have to do a lot of work because you're going to have to create this stuff yourself. Now you can use this supplement, or you can really create just anything that you want and just stick it in the Void. If it doesn't fit in the campaign world that you are creating and you don't want to have a hidden kingdom be part of your adventure site that you're creating, put it in the Void. So think of it as a extraplanar place like in D&D. So if you have a D&D adventure that takes place in the astral plane or whatever, you can substitute the astral plane for the Void. But at any rate, that's how you can use and have adventures in the void. Now, being in the void has its dangers. I mean, the void is a void, so there's nothing in it except for what was placed there by the demon lord's crumbs. But there's also lots of demons, so that's actually where demons live, is in the void. So that is what you'll have to take into consideration and make sure that all of those things are represented in your adventure. So let's talk about some of these other details that I mentioned in this video. So what is the void? We've already kind of talked about that. The void is the space that was created when God split itself off and created the demiurge. And the void just kind of expanded from there. Where is it? Well, it is outside of the universe that the genies created that contains the campaign world. And here's another thought. All these universe bubbles, whoops. One of these universes could be, if you want to play this way, could be the universe of Greyhawk, or the Forgotten Realms, or Kryn, or Eberron. All the other universes that exist within the multiverse of the Demon Lord could be other role-playing games. I mean, this could be the Torg universe. This could be the universe that BattleTech exists in. This could be the universe over here that insert the game of your choice exists within. So that's the beauty of a multiverse. You can place anything in the same space if you want that interconnectivity. And I think there's kind of a desire to do that, especially with the advent of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe that connected the separate movies. Connecting things is not a new concept, it's not a concept that was created by the Marvel Universe by any means, but it is something that has an attractiveness universe, rather than just having every story exist in its own separate universe. So that's the beauty of having the concept of a multiverse and the concept that everything exists within different realities, and maybe you can tap into those other realities, or maybe you can even visit them. So that's part of the allure here. Now, of course, you can say, fuck that, I don't want any of that, I want my reality to be separate, and it's the only thing that exists. That's cool too. That's a fine way of playing as well. But if you do like that interconnectivity, then the multiverse is the way to go. So the multiverses exist within the void, and the demiurge no longer exists. I already explained what the demiurge was, but now the demiurge exists only in the creations that the demons, or the genies made from it. Now, what are the genies? So the genies were originally the creators of the galaxies, the stars, the planets, everything that was in the once universe that are now in the pocket universes that comprise the multiverse. But the genies, they don't really exist in the same form that they did when the demiurge created them. So I kind of envision the genies looking like this image down here, or perhaps even this image here, where they are creating galaxies or whatever out of the stuff that they stole from God and from the demiurge. So these entities were vast. They were huge, powerful entities that were larger than galaxies because they're creating galaxies. So these were just enormous entities. But that's not what a genie is today. A genie today is basically just an elemental creature that, a genie is a genie that bound its energy into an element, or into a form. And so, but that energy that is bound into the form is extremely finite compared to what it once was. So this is what I envision the genies having looked like at one point when they were creating everything. But genies today are a very infinitesimally smaller fragment of what they used to be. because the bulk of what genies were used to create the barriers that protect the realities that they created. So you had all these mega genies, basically sacrificing themselves to create this great barrier around their little corner of their universe. And then what's left, the minor genies, the smaller portions of the genie workforce, all of those things that didn't want to go into the creation of this great barrier, they had to bind themselves to the universe that they're being basically trapped in. And so they had to bind themselves essentially to some type of matter within, or matter or energy within the universe. So that's why you have earth elementals, that's why you have air elementals, that's why you have blood elementals. They just picked a form and infused themselves into that, and that's how you get the various elementals. So the Great Barrier is essentially the energy of the genies, the original genies, which I like to think of as the jinn. They're like the mega genies. The jinn were in my view, and this is not in here anyway, this is just me talking. I call these mega genies the jinn. And then the little worker genies, the tiny genies that were responsible for creating, like the moons and asteroid belts and comets and, the smaller structures, they became what we know as the genies today, bound in these elements. All right, so that is what genies are. That's what the Great Barrier is. What are the words of creation? So the words of creation were created when God split the demiurge from itself. It basically created a language of creation in order to create the demiurge. So pop, and that pop, or exist. Maybe exist was the first word of creation. Who knows? But the words of creation came into being when God the demiurge split from God, and they became two separate entities. And so the lexicon of the words of creations expanded as the genies started creating things. They had to define their creations to put form and substance around them. So, the matter that they were taking from God and from the demiurge, this was all unformed matter. And they had to form the matter into the shapes and structures that they needed for their creations. And so the process of doing this, they had to name their creations, and the process for making, and that's what created the lexicon of creation, these words of power. The genies essentially expanded on that one original word and created this entire lexicon of creation that are the words of power, or the words of creation. So that's how I kind of envision how all that went down. So that essentially is how I picture the mythology, the creation mythology for Shadow of the Demon Lord's campaign setting. Now, of course, you can do your own thing. You can go by what's in this book, or you can say, I got my own ideas on how everything came into being and what the Demon Lord is and all that stuff. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, this game is yours. Once you buy it, you can do whatever the fuck you want with it. But that's how kind of I have taken this and made it my own. I kind of fill in the blanks where we have, the creation mythology painted with a broad brush here. I kind of went in and kind of painted in some details. And those are my details. So what the hell are your details? If you have a different creation myth or different ways of how all this stuff fits together, put it in the comments of this video. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to read it and see what you guys have come up with on your own. All right, so with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. I hope this was an interesting discussion. If you want to talk about it some more, put your comments in the comment section of the video. Otherwise, if you just want to, sit back and marvel in the genius of everything that I put up here, you can do that too. So with that, I am going to wrap this up, and I will catch you in my next video. So until then, hail to the Demon Lord.